how much of a hit did this put on Clayton Kershaw's legacy, Stephen A. Smith?
Well, obviously, you're going to say it has some hit. I mean, when you have an ERA that's 2.39 for your career in the regular season, and then come postseason time, you got a 500 record with a 4.28 ERA, and in 4 World Series games, your ERA goes over 5.3. I mean, that's bad. There's no question about that, and I'm not about to sit up here and try to gloss over that. But that's not where my focus lies last night. I don't view Clayton Kershaw as having to be the individual that lost this game. Last time I checked, Chris Sale was struggling as well. So I look at it from the perspective that neither of them lasted more than 4 innings. One gave up 5, one gave up 3. You know, Clayton Kershaw obviously gave up leads on 2 occasions. I'm sorry, they came back for him on 2 occasions, and still somehow, some way, he just couldn't hold on. He couldn't handle his business. But I'm looking at Dave Roberts. How you sit up there and you take Baez out of that game. Okay, after he strikes out 2 batters, intentionally walks 1, and you bring in Alex Woods, who ultimately gives up that 3-run smack to Eduardo Nunez. To me, that was the bigger issue for me. I understand that Clayton Kershaw is going to be the headline. I get it. But for me, that move and I was thinking about you when it happened, because the first thing I said, that damn Max Kellerman and the rest of these dudes with their analytics. Let me play the numbers. Okay, Baez, I don't want him up against the lefty. No, we don't want that. We don't want that. So we're going to take him out after he strikes out 2 batters.
I'd have left Baez in.
I'd have left him in. That's what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, the point is, it's the analytic dudes that ended up making that decision instead of Dave Roberts using his eyes and saying, you know what, this brother's flowing. I might want to go with this.
Look, the negative outcome doesn't disprove the use of a tool. This happens all the time. I'm for NFL coaches going for it on 4th down. It's not always going to work. Let me just get to Clayton Kershaw. This was yet another nail in the coffin of Kershaw's legacy. Now, his regular season performance is arguably the greatest, not among the greatest of all time. It is there with Lefty Grove and Sandy Koufax and Walter Johnson. I mean, you have to go back 100 years. Arguably, Pedro Martinez, the quality of his prime. Koufax did it for 4 or 5 years. Kershaw's prime was longer, even if it's not quite as dominant because of innings pitched, a different era. Pedro Martinez per inning was better, but Kershaw could go more innings. Like, he may be the greatest ever. 4 consecutive ERA titles, 4 consecutive whip, walks, and hits to innings pitched titles, and they weren't the same 4. There was overlap there that spans 5 years. He should have won 4 consecutive Cy Youngs, and yet he goes from the lowest adjusted ERA, that means you figure out how good you actually are in your era, ever, for any starting pitcher ever, the lowest, to a guy who can't get outs in the postseason. And this has been going on his entire career. It's when he had his fastball. It's now that he doesn't have his fastball. It's when he was being said, well, he's just throwing, not pitching. It's when he's pitching, not throwing. He does not perform under pressure. I know he wants it bad. I mean, maybe he wants it too much. He's wound up too tight. But Brian Kenny on MLB Network, our boy from the old days, Stephen A., my former broadcast partner, did a deep dive on this. There has never been a starting pitcher in the history of baseball who was as dominant as Kershaw normally and as terrible in the postseason. That includes guys who early in their careers were bad in those situations, like Greg Maddux and Roger Clemens even. Nowhere near. This is Peyton Kershaw. Like Peyton Manning, he in the regular season, he maybe is the best ever, but he has eliminated himself from the conversation of the greatest ever because of how he does under pressure.
And what I would modify that is by saying this, Max Kellerman, you're absolutely right. As a starter, as a reliever in the postseason, I kind of like Kershaw. I like the Kershaw that I saw in Game 7 against Milwaukee. I like the Kershaw that I saw in Game 7 last year against the Houston Astros, who came in relief. I like that Clayton Kershaw. I think that Clayton Kershaw, when he's not starting and he's coming in from a relief effort standpoint, whether it's long inning, middle relief, or whether it's to close out a game, as a reliever, he's been pretty damn good in the postseason. For some reason, he has struggled. He hasn't been consistent in the postseason, and nobody's refuting that. All I'm saying to you is the combination of him as a reliever, combined with the decision that Dave Roberts made yesterday, my focus is more so on that. I understand that Clayton Kershaw didn't look great because I was almost ready to yank him out in the first inning.
Yes, but not almost. They should have.
There's no doubt that Dave Roberts micromanaged that situation, that game, but your focus has to be on Kershaw. Max, this context you're putting in, I almost struggle because it is hard to find across sports someone whose regular season is this high, and whose postseason is this low. You brought up Peyton Manning, and now we have to make everything football. But the truth of the matter is Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl. Peyton Manning won 2. Find me somebody. I give you the world of sports. Find me something to put Clayton Kershaw into context.
Dante's Inferno. Let's go to literature. You know, like I have my own Max's Inferno for clutch. So at the highest level is Mariano Rivera or Michael Jordan, the guy who's the greatest who ever did it by some measure, and under pressure, demonstrably, even by the numbers, not just by the eyeball test, somehow gets better than their own standard, which is the best ever under pressure. Down to the lowest, which now should be named for Clayton Kershaw. You're the best who ever did it normally and terrible when they need you the most. Guys like Derek Jeter, Tom Brady has actually jumped levels. He went from the Derek Jeter, Kobe Bryant level, which is they're great. And then under pressure, they're still great. Those guys tend to be overrated because people think they get clutch, they get better on. No, they just stay the same. Brady's actually elevated recently. But the worst, lowest level is from the top to the bottom. And so, no, I don't think there's a comparison in American team sports. And I'll say this. And I feel bad saying I take no pleasure in it. Kershaw's such a great regular season pitcher. The reason the Dodgers have 0 World Series to show for their excellence in the last almost 10 years, let's say, 0, is because they cannot count on their ace.
I disagree.
That's the reason.
I disagree.